Okay, so welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Jazz Keeler, and I'm the Contract Virtual Programs Curator with Griffin Art Projects. And I will just share my screen quickly here again. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Griffin Art Projects is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Stolo nations, and we are honored and grateful to undertake our work here.
Good morning, everyone, and I would like to acknowledge we are honored to work on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. This recognition is a gesture of respect towards the Indigenous stewards of the land we occupy, whose rich cultures are fundamental to artistic life in Vancouver and to the work of the Contemporary Art Society of Vancouver. And as we are gathered online today, I would like to take this opportunity to invite anyone who's joining us to share the land that they are joining us from. Please share if you'd like to in the chat.
I'd also like to mention that if you would like to see live captions displayed for today's presentation, you can enable this by selecting CC Live Transcription at the bottom of your screen. And I will just mention that it's always a bit trickier for names, especially place names or people names, but we do hope that it will be helpful in capturing most of what we are saying today. I also wanted to mention that we are also live streaming this event on Facebook. So if you're experiencing any issues at all with the Zoom interface, head on over to Griffin Art Projects Facebook page, and you will be able to watch this live event streaming there. And after the introductions, I'll just go ahead and drop a link in the chat as well. So I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen. The only other kind of housekeeping note I wanted to mention is that we cannot see or hear audience members today. But if you would like to get in touch with us or have questions, technical issues, feel free to drop a note in the chat below. And I'll also mention that there will be time at the end for audience questions. So if at any point you have a question that pops into your head for one of our three presenters today, you can go ahead and write that in the Q&A dialog box, which you'll notice is actually just below and to the left of the chat. So it's actually just a separate dialog box, and we'll be checking there for the audience Q&A portion of today's program. So I think that's it for my housekeeping notes. As I mentioned, this program is co-hosted with the Contemporary Art Society of Vancouver, and Jazz Lally, who's with me, is actually the president of the Contemporary Art Society of Vancouver. And Jazz and I thought it would be helpful for those who might be joining and who might not know about Griffin or CASV to just share a few quick words about each host organization. So Griffin Art Projects is a nonprofit art residency and gallery located in North Vancouver, devoted to supporting artists in the production of new work through its residency program and in creating new research on contemporary Canadian and international art, artists, and art collections in its exhibition program. And Griffin's exhibitions and events such as this one are always free and open to the public. And today's program is offered in conjunction with Griffin's current exhibition, William Kentridge the Colander, which is curated by Griffin's director, Lisa Baldessera, with collaboration and support from one of today's speakers, Jillian Ross. And it's up in the gallery until September 4th, 2021. So if you're in Vancouver or North Vancouver, be sure to stop by. And today's program in particular is the second of a two-part mini-series offered in collaboration with CSV that focuses on the impacts that COVID-19 has had on artists, galleries, curators, studios, and online entities operating within the complex ecosystem of the international art market in South Africa, Canada, and beyond.
Thank you, Jazz. And CSAV, we're really excited to be supporting this mini-series. So the Contemporary Art Society of Vancouver is a registered charitable organization founded in 1977, and we promote the understanding and appreciation of contemporary art by hosting a regular schedule of members-only events featuring local artists, curators, critics, and collectors.
Awesome. Thanks, Jazz. So without further to say, we'll jump right into our speaker presentation. So today's presentation features presentations and a conversation with Jillian Ross, Amé Bell, and Vivian Mehr. And so to start us off, we have Jillian Ross and Amé Bell who will be sharing a presentation. So I am going to spotlight them here so I can introduce them both. So Jillian Ross has been the master printer and director of the David Krut Workshop in Johannesburg, South Africa for the past 16 years, working with celebrated South African and international artists in collaborative printmaking. Most notably, Ross has been collaborating with William Kentridge since 2006 on several of his major print series and has produced over 150 works. Throughout her work, particularly in the publicly accessible open studio format of David Krut Workshop, Ross has promoted and enhanced artist, collector, and general public knowledge of printmaking through educational workshops, knowledge sharing, and the gallery program at David Krut Projects with gallery director Amé Bell. Ross and her family have recently relocated to Canada, to her home province of Saskatchewan, where she completed a Bachelor of Fine Arts with great distinction from the University of Saskatchewan in 2002. And during this challenging pandemic year, she has been developing new relationships and projects while working across oceans in order to build new ways of collaborating with international artists through printmaking. The result is a soon-to-be released collaborative print project with the University of Alberta and William Kentridge. And Amé Bell is the gallery and sales director at David Krut Project and current PhD candidate at the Department of Art History at the University of Witwatersrand, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, Amé. As gallery director, she is responsible for all projects and operations regarding the gallery and art fair exhibition programs, local and international sales, and the direction of all gallery and bookstore staff administration, sales, and communications. As an accomplished book designer and curator, Bell has worked with many local and international artists, collaborating on exhibition making and publications documenting their practices. She works closely with master printer Jillian Ross and with the David Krut Workshop, which is located at Arts on Main in the inner city of Johannesburg. And Bell connects young artists to the David Krut Workshop, allowing them to gain collaborative editioning experience by working with a skilled team of printers. And Bell has further been involved in early childhood development activities and children's printmaking workshops, which promote arts education among the youth. So thank you so much, Jill and Amé. We're so delighted and thrilled that you're able to join us today for this conversation. And over to you.
Thank you so much from South Africa.
And Saskatoon. Thank you, Jazz and Jazz, for helping us today to lead the discussion that we've been really excited to have. It's wonderful actually to be able to look back over the course of the last year and to look at triumphs over obstacles and hurdles, and to be able to work together from Canada, South Africa, then to have a conversation with Vivian as well, kind of in summarizing how collaborative work begins, continues, evolves. So thank you.
Wonderful. So Jillian.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Go ahead, Amé. I'm so sorry.
Go for it.
I was just about to say that.
No, I was just wanting to add. No, it's just lovely highlighting how far we've come since COVID, and just everything that we have to look forward to, and just putting the presentation together was a wonderful processing everything that's happened, and it's been wonderful preparing that. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Thanks so much both. And Jillian and Amé have put together a wonderful presentation pre-recorded, which I'll share now, and we'll also hear from them further in a live conversation to follow afterwards. So I will just go ahead and share my screen.
David Krut Projects and David Krut Workshop have always worked in tandem. We have multiple spaces. In Johannesburg alone, there are 3 spaces. One of them is a gallery space, one of them is an archive space, one of them is a printmaking workshop. In each of these sections, you have books. You have art up on the walls from an archive, brand new projects, projects in development, showcasing ongoing. Prior to COVID, we had exhibition programs that were extensive, very localized, always in situ. It was come visit the space, come experience what we're making. At David Krut Workshop, what we had was an open door policy that anybody was allowed to come into the workshop. You can experience firsthand printing. You can see artists at work, established, emerging. It was a community space where people came to hang out, to start to make work, to develop projects with a whole team of us from all divisions, all sectors, from the gallery space, from the workshop space, from printers to podcast makers, anything you could possibly think of. Different teams of people communicating internally, effectively with artists and giving them as much, I guess, positive energy, as much enthusiasm, nurturing environments to keep making work.
The gallery spaces were focused on working towards unpacking the projects for an audience. So our collectors could come into the gallery space and really see the essence of how projects were made, as if they were in the workshop. It was an extension of how the works existed in the workshop. We were trying to communicate that to an audience. We were focused on education, not just an education of how the works were made, but also about the artist's entire practice. We were dealing with publishing of books, talks, exhibition-related events, which included printmaking demos where people could come and learn more about prints and the value of print work in an artist's body of work.
We also had archive spaces that were nurturing environments to allow you another place to hang out. So every location had its own set of space issues, in a sense that you were allowed into a different environment in each and every single place. This is our one location, our archive space, our major bookstore that invites you in with a garden, that was inviting you into workshops. We are teaching adults how to print, what print was all about, growing our audience, growing our collector base, because it's essential. What we've often found is that we needed to connect artists here to children, printmakers, to adults, and to talk about work, to understand the technical aspects of work, immerse everybody into this working process and allow them to create in their own right so that they had a better understanding of what print work was all about, that it wasn't about making something that was a reproduction of an artist's work, but it's actually a unique work in its own right. A lot of our major program included all of our artists working hand in hand in our in situ in each of these spaces and allowing an audience in, allowing our printers a way in, allowing our gallerists ways in to have different kinds of conversations and a different localized program.
The children's workshops also expanded our audience engagement. It expanded our collectors base because we were inviting people in to bring their children in and really come and learn about the works from a base level. So really installing a value of print work and art making practice in the youth and while their parents were there. We also started to unpack works digitally on the digital platforms to show the different components of how the works were made so that people would have a better insight into the intricacies of the process.
Then COVID hit. Our individualized spaces were closed. Our workshop had no one working in it. Our obstacles were giant. Our hurdles enormous. What was a space of makers had now everyone working from home. Everyone are making space completely vacant. I came to Canada. I've been working at the David Krut Workshop since 2003. That is a major challenge. How do we overcome that? It was a short-term possibility, but what we did was we moved everyone together online and we started talking about ways to remain creative. How do we support each of these different sections, these creative people? All have enormous hurdles. Some people don't have laptops at home. How do we engage? What do we do? How do we remain creative? How do we keep in conversation?
So naturally, the workshop team weren't able to come into the studio to produce work. So the natural way forward was to keep making works in some way online. So they developed these children's activities, many activities online, to stay active. From the gallery side, there was a huge challenge in terms of there was no personal connectivity, no social events, no walkabouts, no personal engagement with collectors, and no conversations that were needing to be had. And with that, possibility of no works coming out of our workshop that we could present to an audience.
We were halfway in the middle of making Maya Malevich's editioned works. We had every piece made. All of her works are collage pieces. Everything is a unique series. It's a unique series we've been developing for the last 3 years. So what was really beautiful is that the workshop team, prior to the lockdown in South Africa, printed as many of these parts for an edition series that we hadn't quite been able to achieve at that moment in time. And every printer took a project home. So what was quite a beautiful way of trying to figure out how to share from the workshop photographs, process imagery, ongoing blog posts, having constant conversations over WhatsApp as to, does this piece work? Does this piece work? How does this work? The artist reacting. We're, as a creative team, everyone was on WhatsApp. Conversations started to happen. Everyone was allowed a voice, and everyone started creatively thinking in a different way. From each of their own spaces, their home studios, they took all these parts home. What we then started to explore was, how do you unpack these works now for an audience? Previously, we were doing this on blog posts, etc. But it became like, on existing websites, it's all about an archive. So it's very difficult to show new work, developing work. And a lot of the audience wasn't following it. So in a blog post, we would always unpack this, but we weren't quite going into video. Always having our hands full. Now we had our hands full only on one project at a time. How do we unpack it? How do we share it for our collector base?
So keeping this, bringing the works, the making of the works into the artist's, into the printer's home studio played an essential part in us actually keeping the team together. We have a team of 20 plus people across all locations, and having the ability to carry on their work was essential in the basically practitioners being employed, the people who produce the work that would then be offering to collectors. This project really enabled them to, within that time of hard lockdown, to really focus on their work and carry on producing. At the same time, we needed to come up with more visible ways to be visible online. The management of the organization became more visible. David was contributing to conversations about earlier print works, and we were doing talks with artists online, walkabouts online. We got voice clips from artists, which we would then put to video, providing an inside story of the making of the work. And then really just expanding on our social media and marketing activity, which our media and marketing manager, Britt Lawton, with the help of the entire team, was able to substantially increase our audience locally and internationally. With that, we developed our skills. The skills of the team were enhanced to video editing, podcasting, publishing, writing and design. And with that, we built this brand new platform, a viewing room website, which is called the David Krut portal, where we could start showcasing work in series, and also bring what people would usually see in the workshop, the making of the series and how it exists, how works exist in series, into these online portals. This provided us with an opportunity to create experiences for collectors. It incorporated consolidated essays on the works, process videos, gallery images, and most importantly, allowed us an opportunity to be transparent with our pricing, so people could have all the information in advance, so that they could have an understanding of projects. The presentation of the work became really focused into how it could be more accessible to an audience online. And what was really lovely about the viewing rooms is that we were able to present to a larger audience, not just locally, but internationally. People started seeing more of what we were producing in the way that we would showcase it in our physical spaces and unpack it in our physical spaces.
what I loved too was that we started to sectionalize our teams. Everybody was working on different aspects of how we move all of our different projects online. And so from the gallery, they started to work on the online viewing rooms and on consolidating. But together, collectively, everyone was growing their skills. So some of the printers became video editors. Some of the printers became online demo orientated, things that we've been trying to do for a number of years. So Chad Cordero just started, he could only work from home. We couldn't come into the studio, so he started an online series of demonstrations as to how, using some of the materials that come from David Krut workshops, so that you could see on hand real carved plates, real projects, and how they get translated, how you can take those projects home and work from your own space, what we're looking at when we're working in the studio. He started to unpack these over a course of different demonstrations. And what was really beautiful about it is that the whole team was working on it. All of us started to figure out a different way of education, a different way of teaching an audience. You can see a lot of these films online from a range of different sources, but this was the unique way that David Krut approaches some of these projects.
So another beautiful thing about the viewing room is that we were able to present it to audiences all at the same time, all across the world. With particular projects like Helena's project, we would encourage audiences to engage with us through the online viewing room, requesting advanced catalogs, and we would distribute those catalogs to people all across the world, all at the same time, so that people had the first opportunity to buy the works hot off the press. And it was really successful in this project, where the audience responded really positively, and this body of work sold out in 2 weeks. So we know that that strategy worked, and it's just the presentation, the in-depth presentation of that we are able to provide through the viewing rooms really give people the information that they need in order to make a decision as to how they would want to be invested in this artist project.
One last project I want to talk about is how creative thinking moves us into a different trajectory. So there are different collecting audiences across the board. So what we have been trying to do over the course of the last 20 years, longer even, was all education based. Our collectors base is established and also emerging. So what we're trying to do is across the board discuss how works are made, invite people in to share a broader way of thinking. So how does continued work happen in a studio space where artists at a point are no longer working? So we have a team of 6 printers. We have myself planted in Canada for the moment. We have 6 printers at DKW who are now allowed to work back in the studio, but artists aren't coming back in. What do we do? One of the best ways of sharing what kind of problem solving that we think of, unilateral conversation, how do we keep projects going? Is a very good example is one of the projects that we had ongoing with William Kentridge. It's the Triumphs in the Men's Woodcut series. That is 6 enormous woodcuts made up of multiple pieces that we began in 2016 that we hadn't had a chance to finish editioning. So what we did was we started, again, going back into WhatsApp conversation, teaching each other different aspects. My role on the project was tearing up all of the collage pieces and putting each of the editioned works together. And what I did was over WhatsApp, I taught aspects to Sibongiseni Kulu in order that he could take over my role in this particular project. And what we've always done is that this is all based on trust. All of these relationships that we established, both Amé and I, and the print teams, the podcast teams, everybody, it's collective trust, collective understanding of how artists work, and then collective trust in each other as well. So everybody works on these projects at David Krut Workshop. It's not as though one person plays a vital role. We play different roles. And in this case, we just started playing the next role. And so we've celebrated over the course of the last year the completion of editioning all the moving parts from this particular body of work. And I've been able to bring them over to Canada, to Vancouver, to unpack parts of what you would experience at David Krut Workshop in South Africa. I brought it straight to a new audience. in Vancouver, which to me is exceptional. It's how do you keep sharing editioned works, projects that are ongoing for 5 years? So what we started to do is we started to look at it in a different space. We're sharing how I've made this particular piece, but it comes from everybody else in South Africa making those particular pieces. So what we've been able to do is the Kentridge Studio had done a film a number of years ago showing how the whole team at DKW works together to make these giant pieces. And then what I can do here is document how you do that in one room. So taking all of those moving parts overseas. It's reaching a new audience. It's allowing a different way of communication to happen. While at the same time, we start, how do we continue ongoing collaborations in South Africa with William, with other artists? And in this case, again, much easier, broadly speaking, that technique doesn't have to be hands-on, one or the other. We pick a technique that works while we're all working in isolation. So we pick the technique of photogravure, and we start working with a studio, Jeanne Warren from Warren Editions in Cape Town, who is well-versed at this particular technique, which is quite elaborate and quite difficult. And then she makes the plates in Cape Town from photographs that come from William's studio while he's in isolation. And then Kim Lee Lagerberg starts to edition these works, proof and edition these works at DKW. So it's one tier of the team is working on an existing edition that needs time to print and to work on, while the other tier starts working on brand new work. And over here in Canada, I start also working on a new project of Williams. We start new teams, we start new collector bases in the sense that we're inviting yet another team of people, in this case, Stephen Dixon at the University of Alberta, who has the technical skills in Canada. So these prints then go back and forth in the mail, like writing letters. And there's something quite wonderful in that process. Now we have our working spaces working again. And slowly but surely, each of our team members is in each of these sections. And here in Canada, we start to look at an exhibition at Griffin Art Projects called The Colander, which invites an audience and a collector base into the way in which we've been working collaboratively with William Kentridge for 25 years plus. Myself since 2006, David Krut since the 1990s, and a lot of these works, brand new and from the archive, are on show for a new collector base to actually understand. And brand new works straight from the Kentridge Studio, DKW in South Africa, to new works being developed in Canada, all in one place.
So things that we're really looking forward to is collaborations just like that, and just expanding collaborations across the board, continuing collaborations in our workshop, bringing in emerging artists, carrying on working with existing artists, our established artists in South Africa, really the whole team being in the studio again, working together. We're carrying on inviting artists to come and work in our David Krut workshop in Johannesburg, using our gallery spaces as residency spaces where they can produce work over a period of time, sometimes for a month, sometimes shorter. We're also working with satellite galleries, a very exciting collaboration happening with the Fourth, where artists like Olivia Buerta, their residencies got cancelled, the exhibitions got cancelled, and just being able to work with spaces to carry on or supporting artists to carry on producing work, things that we will be showing in our galleries later the year when we are able again, and just really supporting them in this way. We're also carrying on our collaborations with our photographers, Ethiopian photographer Ida Mulene, which will be working with Chad Cordero in Abidjan on a new print project, which is fantastic, carrying on that collaboration. And then also working with another satellite gallery in Venice for Lebo Toka, also a young photographer, and just expanding our collector base for our artists in that way. Just it's been so easy now after COVID to work internationally, and just knowing that we don't have to physically be in the spaces, but we can work together to provide the best for our artists, and just developing their audiences ongoing.
An extension of that just becomes a satellite space, basically, where I'm working from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, in having a small editioning studio currently, to allowing cross international collaborations to continue to happen. So once travel becomes a little bit easier. Now we have different pods in different parts of the world, and we're able to better communicate internally in order to move, and it's so what I'm looking for skills exchange. It continues. Education is at the heart of everything that we do. New spaces are emerging. Our online presence is possible and growing because of the fact that it's enabled us a different way of reaching them. David Krut Projects.
Amazing. So thank you so much to Jill and Amé for that wonderful presentation, and so incredible to hear how David Krut Workshop has just been able to pivot so quickly and come together to collaborate and create a thriving international workflow with your artists, printers, gallery and staff. So just a really inspirational to hear that. So thank you so much for putting together that wonderful presentation. And I'll pass the mic over to you, Jazz.
Thank you, Jazz. Yeah, Jillian and Amé, that was great. And I would like to thank Vivian for joining us today as well and being part of the conversation. And so Viviane Mehr is the founder owner of Vivian Art, a contemporary commercial art gallery in Calgary with a primary mission to support emerging and mid-career Canadian artists. She completed her Bachelor of Fine Arts at the Alberta University of the Arts, previously ACAD, in 2010 and opened her gallery in 2013. Previously, Vivian had a near 20-year career as a professional social worker. This background has proven very beneficial as Vivian has worked to establish herself as a gallerist on the local, Canadian, and international art scenes. She considers relationship building at the very core of her success. This, paired with her commitment to invest in what she believes in, has kept her afloat in a very challenging market. Vivian served on the board of directors for MoCA Calgary, now part of Contemporary Calgary, until she opened her gallery in the fall of 2013. She is currently the vice chair on the board of directors for One Yellow Rabbit Performance Theatre Company in Calgary, Alberta. Thank you, Vivian, for being here.
Thank you for having me. And hello to everyone who's joining us, and for viewers who may watch this later, welcome to VivianeArt. I'm set up in my gallery space, which is in Inglewood in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I'm very honored to be included in this conversation today. As an introduction to set the groundwork for this conversation centered around collecting in the time of COVID, I just want to talk briefly about the gallery so that just all makes sense as we begin to talk about obstacles and solutions during the pandemic. The gallery opened in the fall of 2013, and so we'll be celebrating our 8th birthday coming up in September, which is really exciting for me. And it's been a wonderful labor of love to build the gallery around the core of relationships, which for me is the heart, the spine, it's everything about what makes an endeavor like this successful. So those relationships are with artists, most definitely, with collectors, both in our home community in Calgary, but also across Canada and internationally. And those relationships extend as well to other gallerists, as well as curators, and people like the David Krut Projects, who I've been working with now since 2015. The core of our mission at VivianeArt is to support and present critical, emerging and mid-career, primarily Canadian talent. But through my relationship with David Krut and the David Krut Projects, I've also featured William Cuntridge and Ayla Mouline as well, who Amé had just mentioned from Ethiopia. It's a wonderful crossover out of the Canadian market into the international market, and I think it adds a lovely depth to the gallery. So I had my very first presentation of William's work back in 2015. And I think Jazz is going to include some links in the chat as we go, but I'm also going to have her share a few visuals. This is just the exhibition page from that presentation back in September through October, oh goodness, 2014. I don't even have the dates right. And this happened through a collector in Toronto who introduced our gallery to David. And we presented the entire Nose print series, as well as a number of works from the Universal Archive, this being one of them, the coffee pots. And Jillian Ross was, at William's side producing all of this work. I didn't know Jillian when we mounted the exhibition. It was only through the time the exhibition was hung that I learned that Jillian was Canadian, born and raised in Saskatchewan and schooled there. And I was fortunate enough to have Jillian visit the gallery, and she came back to Canada for Christmas. At that time, she had one son and came with her partner, Brandon, and I visited with them in the gallery. And it was so exciting to realize that this collaboration I had started with a South African print workshop through a Toronto-based collector was connecting me to someone who was visiting me in my own home city of Calgary. So Jillian then subsequently, if you could just move to the next image, Jazz. Jillian subsequently, I introduced her to some of the people at the Banff Center, which is a center for creativity and leadership, an international force to be reckoned with, really. Just 1 hour outside of Calgary in the beautiful Rocky Mountains. I was able to introduce Jillian to them, and they had her come and host a residency at the Banff Center. And at that time, Jillian came and did a talk in the gallery space, and I hung some of William's works again. You can see some nose prints right behind her there. So it's been a wonderful relationship. It's now lasted, some 7 years. And as we've moved into the time of COVID, we've collaborated yet again in a closer way because of the challenges that has brought her to Canada and to Edmonton and the University of Alberta, which is only a 3-hour drive away. You can probably close that screen now, Jazz. I just want to move on to talk a little more specifically about COVID. So the relationships are important, and I said they're the core and the spine and all of that about the gallery. So how do we continue our relationships and make new ones when we can't host events for our friends and our supporters in our community? We can't travel, and we can't go to art fairs, which has been a really important part of what I've done. I've typically done 3 or 4 art fairs in a year, in Seattle, in Miami, in New York, in Toronto, in Montreal. And that's just not been a possibility for over a year now. So there's been such a break in how I was used to connecting with people, connecting with artists, collectors, curators, and other galleries. So how do we ensure that people still have the opportunity to connect with us, to view the exhibitions we're hosting? Exhibitions that often artists will work on for over a year, and then we don't want there to be this absence of a viewership for that hard work. How do we make that happen? How do we celebrate that work, and how do we make sales? So those are the challenges that COVID presents for a commercial art space like this. So when COVID hit last March in 2020, we had actually just returned from our last art fair, which was Art on Paper New York as a part of Armory Week. And we had just hung a new exhibition by an artist. It was her first solo presentation. She's a Calgary-based artist, Sarah Nordine, and we couldn't open it. And it was really crushing for her and for me, but I felt it mostly for her. And so we started our journey. And what the journey meant was changing how we do business. For those first 3.5 months, we could not be open at all. We were completely shut down. So we pivoted to a digital presentation. Sarah Nordine and I did a physically distanced IG Instagram live event in the gallery, as well as a YouTube live event. And we sent out invitations to our emails and shared on Instagram, and got a really wonderful audience for a 1-hour conversation, just Sarah and I together in the space. And it was very well received. And we had a couple of sales from that Instagram and YouTube event. And so it set the stage for how we would proceed from there. One of the benefits of these Instagram live events is that suddenly these things can be accessed by people far beyond the boundaries of our city. So accessibility is a huge benefit. But the other thing that I found quite surprising, and this was feedback that came to me from my collectors and viewers, was that there was an intimacy in the conversation I had with my artists in those events that was very different than what they experienced in the gallery space. So the Instagram Live events have become a staple. And when I was able to reopen in the middle of June, and in a brand new gallery, the space I'm in, I had already planned to move when COVID happened. And so I proceeded with that. I'm in a wonderful neighborhood now across the street from the Esker Foundation in Calgary. When I was able to reopen, I continued and have continued to host Instagram live events for every single exhibition. It has provided those intimate conversations to our viewers, and it's also allowed us to reach people well beyond our boundaries and our borders. So Instagram live events have continued. In addition, how I bolstered my digital presence was also to begin producing professional videos for each exhibition. So I would have the works produced, a quick 4 to 5 minute video, including content from the artist and myself, and actual footage of the gallery. And that went on a YouTube channel that we launched last June. It has been very successful, our YouTube channel. We have had more than 1.7 million views, something I'm very proud of. And what it's provided, now we have video footage for viewers who want to see an exhibition and try and experience the work and can't be here. They have video footage of the work. We also have the IG Lives on our Instagram feeds, which we're also able to put on YouTube. And we added as well virtual tours. You could pull that up if you'd like, Jazz. The virtual tours exist now for every single exhibition that we host in the gallery. So for people who are unable to come in and see it in person, and we have been open now since the middle of June. We've had restrictions, but as a retail space, we've been able to be open. People can come and tour an exhibition virtually. And this is a tour that's based on actual photography of a hung exhibition, which I think really adds to the value of the virtual tour as opposed to some of the software where you're just putting a still image on an artificial wall. So this is the photographer comes in, the photographer shoots our exhibitions and then puts it on the site in the virtual tour. So we've done one of these for every exhibition since we opened in June. This was our exhibition with artist Eric Olson, which was June 2020. So that is another digital thing that we've done to add. There are little price tags on each of the images so people can get all of the information about the work as well. And we launched Vivian Art Store on our website. And that link, I think you also have, Jazz. So in addition to being able to view the virtual tours, as well as all of the video content that we produce, purchasers or collectors who are just interested in the show can actually go through the store. And if they click on a work, it'll give them all of the information. And here's the really important thing. Everything is transparent. The pricing is there. It's completely available for the viewer to see. There's no hoops to jump through. There's no contact the gallery for pricing. It's completely transparent. So there are silver linings on this COVID cloud. And I would say 2 of them are accessibility and transparency. removal of barriers for people to acquire pieces. There's no song and dance. The old way of doing business in the art world, I'm hoping, is going the way of the dinosaur. And I am personally quite engaged in continuing all of these endeavors, even now, when we can begin to have more people in the space, and hopefully over the course of the next months, begin to host events again and attend art fairs. These elements that we've added, the digital presence, the accessibility, the online store, the opportunity for people to have all the information at their fingertips will continue regardless. It will just be added to all of the old ways we used to do business. That's my presentation. I believe all the links are getting sent to people, but most of what I've shared has been directly from our website, VivianeArt.com. So you can also just take a look there. The store link is on VivianeArt.com. And our YouTube channel is just, if you search Vivian Art, you'll see all of that content. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Vivian. It's been, yeah, such a pleasure to learn more about how, again, Vivian Art has pivoted so quickly over the past year and some of the silver linings you were able to pull out of that experience and that you hope to continue implementing in your programming. So thank you so much for sharing. And we'll now transition to a more informal conversational portion of this program. So I'm going to invite everyone to join me back here. Awesome. So I'll mention again that we are totally open to audience questions. So at any point, if you have a question that pops into your head and you want to get involved and participate in the conversation, feel free to either raise a virtual hand. You'll see that yellow hand at the bottom of your screen, and I can actually unmute you. So we'd love to hear from you directly. Or if you're more comfortable, you can also type a question into the Q&A dialog box, which is just to the left of the chat dialog box, and we'll be checking there for audience questions. But yeah, again, just a huge thanks to Amé, Jillian, and Vivian for your wonderful presentations. And one question that we thought could just kind of kick off the conversation is just to learn a little bit more about the context in which the three of you know each other and have worked together. I know you talked a little bit about it in your presentations, but I also know that you have some upcoming projects and new initiatives on the go. So I thought a good jump off point might just be to talk a little bit about the relationship between our three presenters today.
Vivian, I want to jump right in there and say your presentation was fantastic. There's something about the energy that comes out of your space that I think is just exceptional. And I think
thank you.
Amé and I have been working with a team of people, like all of these people, trying to keep all of these people together and working. And how do you do this? And the extension of collaboration of which you've been able to do with a small team in your space and take everything online, and the transparency 100%. That is, I think, what is so exciting about everything.
Thank you.
Changes. So these are enormous hurdles, but moving so creatively online, I think, too. Allowing projects to shine, really.
Thank you. Oh, you're so kind. You know, I don't know if any of you have seen this, but a little shout out to Magnus Reich. Magnus wrote this book, and he actually just released one specifically for artists. And his big push is about removing barriers and transparency. And this book's been out for years, but I really do think that COVID has pushed the art world forward exponentially faster than it was moving out of necessity. And it's a really, really good thing. It's one of the really good things that's come out of a really hard and horrible thing. And there were many good things, challenges to how we see our fellow participants in this world has changed. And that's a good thing.
I also think that international collaborations have opened up, and the world has opened up, and conversations that we had started a number of years ago over a funny way of meeting, and then collectively working together, allowing conversations to begin, continues. And the support also that Vivian's offered in bringing the Triumphs and Laments series to Canada was a catalyst to the exhibition that's on at Griffin Art Projects right now. halfway through last year, I found myself in Saskatchewan trying to figure out what it is that you do in this time. And one of the people that I reached out to was Vivian, very naturally. Everything that it is that she has happening in her program, previous residency spaces that she was sharing, that we don't understand in our careers as they're building, what those entities allow us and how you can keep moving forward. And with Vivian and with Lisa Baldessera, we were able to bring these projects in an enormously difficult time to Canada through like a series of stepping stones. So there's these connections that unfortunately Amé and Vivian haven't met in the flesh, but the possibilities are now endless and the conversation's begun. So they continue.
Yes. And Amé and I have not met. I've met many of David Krut's team over the years, but they've primarily been through the New York branch of the David Krut Projects. So Lauren and Megan before her, and yourself, of course, Jillian. So I mean, I hope that that this Griffin Art presentation extends some form of it, some version of it to Calgary at some point down the road. That's something viewers should know we're working on. It's just hard to actualize these things sometimes, but I look forward to an ongoing relationship, and I'm very grateful for the introduction to Ida's work. I, of course, when I first started looking at her work and have accessed her through David Krut, I didn't realize she went to high school in Calgary, but it just is so wonderful to extend her practice to people here in Canada. And that's through the grace of David Krut and the Trust, and to continue to present prints of the caliber of William Kentridge. That is the benefit for sure of this collaboration.
Yeah. And I think the importance just of us all working together and supporting each other is a really important lesson I think that we learned last year. Not a lesson, but just the importance of working together, supporting projects where we can, and supporting artists, because it's really about them and it's about our audiences as well. I love what you were saying about just how important the audience is as well, because for us as well, audience is everything, alongside of our artists. So how we can bring those links together is great. So it would be really exciting to keep supporting both you, Vivian, and Jill in Calgary from our side, from South Africa and New York. And, you know, that's what we're here for. Love working with other people, collaborating, and continuing the relationships.
Amazing. Yeah, one of the things, Vivian, that I found so interesting that you noted was the increase in this feeling of intimacy with artist talks taking place online, which is so fascinating. And it resonated too a little bit. Like I mentioned before, this is the second part of a two-part series. And our first speakers, the directors of Latitudes, Lucy and Roberta, also mentioned that there's this feeling that audience members and collectors had the chance to really get to know the artists through these online platforms, which to me was kind of unexpected and so lovely to hear, because you would think that distance and it being online would kind of have the reverse effect, so that intimacy was amplified, was just so lovely to hear. And I wondered if when things start to open up, and I know Vivian, you mentioned that you plan to kind of continue all of these new initiatives, if those online talks will continue to happen even once things kind of open up in the gallery.
Absolutely. As much as social media can be considered a place and space for artifice, let's face it, it also is a place for real human connection and interaction. And I have felt it's been really beneficial to have those conversations, and then they're recorded. So then we can use that content going forward. We send links to people who are interested in collecting the artist's work, can suddenly see their face and hear them talk about their work in really detailed conversations. So we definitely will continue with those.
Amazing. Yeah, that's lovely.
Especially without the pressures of an audience looking at you. I love that intimacy, one-on-one chats with the audience. We also achieved that in a way with artists sending us voice notes on their work, just thoughts that we could put to video, and just while we show images or videos of them making their work, they're actually expressing their thoughts. And we had a wonderful response from our audience just to have that personal connectivity, because I think that 100% that's very important, especially in the world of digital and social media, to maintain personal connection, which is so essential in our gallery spaces, in our workshop spaces. People want to feel invested in projects, even if it's just them looking and admiring in the work. They don't always have to purchase, but they do want to feel like it's part of them. And it's such a crucial part.
I think that,
Absolutely.
and I think that the hardest part is the celebration of work done and then on exhibition. So Vivian, as you were saying, how gutted you felt for some of your artists, it was exactly the same feeling, I think, globally. So on so many different levels, but how do you celebrate? How do you feel as though you've accomplished something if you can't share it with other people? And there was a way of moving these projects online that felt like you could actually experience work in a new way. So if your artist can feel that significant shift from the audience and interacting with the audience, then it is successful. I think it's really difficult not to have audiences allowed into gallery spaces at the moment. But what I also think it's done is that it's had people kind of stop and wait. And now that they are allowed to go back into an exhibition, they appreciate it. It's so much more. The experience of seeing something in front of you is absolutely different still than seeing it online. As much as but you now go in with an informed understanding of what the work is about. You've been able to hear directly from the artist. It could be anywhere in the world. And once travel opens up, it will open up in a different way. But now we can share. People are able to view from anywhere all of these projects. And people are just getting much better at how they're showing the work and in producing work and having a moment to stop to actually make work. That's also extremely important. And when we were working on all these art fairs and working in an exhibition program, brand new work, straight to an art fair, people actually weren't able to actually make bodies of work anymore. They weren't able to make enough work to actually have an exhibition. So that was also some of the obstacles we were having pre-COVID.
Yeah, I really loved too, Jill, what you talked about in your presentation about really slowing down and unpacking one work and taking that time to kind of dive into the different layers. Also really inspiring to hear about how the David Krut team just kind of, pivoted so quickly, and people were working from home, and some of your printers were becoming videographers, and you were making all this content, and people's roles were shifting, and just kind of the collaboration and adaptability that emerged from that was so inspiring to see. And I wonder if some of those shifts in roles will continue. I know it must have felt, transitory or impermanent at the beginning, but I wonder if some of those shifts will continue as you settle in to, how the operations will unfold once things begin to open up.
I must say we were really impressed with our team and how they evolved so quickly into doing all these different things, all these new skills. I mean, our viewing room website was built by Liz Morano in New York. David sent her on a website building course, and before you knew it, we have this beautiful website. The entire team learned how to work on the back end and design, and just there's so many skills that were acquired. And actually, I think that skill of transformation has been taken on by the team, and we just keep evolving, keep new things. No one person, we don't just have printers and just have administrators and just have people who are dealing with one task. Everyone's a multitasker, and everyone's so willing to learn, and they're constantly coming up with new initiatives and learning new skills that everyone is able to work across the board, which has been so essential in this time, because when one person can't do something for whatever reason, which is also something you need to keep in mind, when someone gets sick or someone can't come into work, someone else can pick up what they've been doing. And so many more people with that as well have learned so much more about printmaking through all of our material being so accessible online, and that's exactly what we want. Our workshop has always been open, and really we wanted to just demystify those processes so that people can understand more what we're working with. But our team's been exceptional, and we're so proud of them just for all the change that they've been through and that they're so excited about going forward. And Jill as well, with all her sales skills. She's a salesperson, a printer, marketer. She does everything as well. It's a true David Krut person that's come to Canada in full form.
Sure do miss that team of people. It's a completely different entity when you're on your own. And I'm not going to say on my own, because I'm not on my own. It's a community of people. But Vivian, it's the same thing. How do you move quickly? You know, and how do you bring another team in to help you to do that, so that you can concentrate on the aspects of what you're best at, you know, and it's in keeping conversations going with artists. It's keeping conversations, what maybe Amé didn't talk about either, which Vivian did really well, actually, was how many conversations we were having with collectors at the same time as we were with our artists. I have to say that probably the first 6 months of me being in Canada was just actual conversations. I wasn't very productive, I have to say, in making work, which I'm very used to doing. And it was just making sure everyone was okay. Those were very giant hurdles to overcome from a lot of different people, different places, and then keeping us connected. And a year later, it's amazing what you can see, what people have achieved, how we've all come out stronger. From mentors also, you know, from having conversations that can continue to kind of pull us through the mud sometimes, because it has been difficult. But all of us, I think, have come out. I've enjoyed watching Vivian's program on Instagram. It's so accessible. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's this exhibition that's on right now is called The Green Room, and it's very aptly based on how we are all performers in our own right. Always in our day-to-day life, when we catch a reflection in a window or a mirror, and we sort of take note of how we look or how we present ourselves, but also with social media, how we've all, like, so many of us become performers. And so I've cracked jokes more than once over the last year that perhaps I'm in the wrong industry. I should be on radio or TV or something. I don't know, but it's just maybe come too naturally. Maybe that's a problem.
I don't know. I pulled my hair out a few times in those initial videos, so I don't know how you felt, but it didn't. It is hard. It's a different role entirely, but it can also be quite wonderful to be able to explore. You know, the energy back with your artists, also through conversation and being able to share it.
Amazing.
I was never a big, huge fan of social media, but for the work of this gallery and for the benefit of artists and collectors, it's been such a wonderful thing. And I've spoken a lot about Instagram. It's just such a great visual platform. So it has been really important.
I love this collaborative spirit that we've all been mentioning over and over, of connecting with individuals and artists around the world and collectors around the world as well. And most importantly, the power of social media now, right? To bring in a new generation of collectors who are probably younger and can better manage the platform as well, and the outreach that it's had. And Vivian, I just want to comment on how, like, important the comment that you made about accessibility and breaking down the gallery itself, right? And allowing and being transparent, because we often think of a gallery, some people are intimidated, right? But also Jill and Amé, the videos that you were uploading and really showing that, you know, there are a lot of people in the back end working and breaking those barriers and allowing people to come in is so important at this time to really build those connections and understanding of what a gallery is. So thank you for all the work that you do. I just wanted to make a comment and say thank you for sharing that with us today.
It's a pleasure. There's so many people, I think, that are worth acknowledging on how teamwork and collaborations ongoing can happen. And as I said, it, like the preface, the very heart of David Krut as an organization comes from David on education platforms. I think he's even texting in the chat right now. But it's and how he connects he used to travel a lot to New York, to London, and how some of us have had that opportunity to do so, and now that's going to continue. And so it's the ethos of the company. It is mentoring each other to continue to push and to strive for breaking down the barriers of how to move forward, how to overcome obstacles, how you problem solve. And in South Africa right now, with power outages ongoing, that's why we pre-recorded our conversation. These are giant hurdles ongoing, but it's not getting in anyone's way too badly, because they're just going to keep going.
Yeah, we did right in line with, we do have a conversation, a comment from David Krut, which I'll just read out loud because it would be lovely to share with everyone. David wrote, in passing, what lockdown did was to turn our workshop into a sort of media organization. It allowed us to focus on being able to tell the backstories of the artists and their artworks that come from our workshop.
100%. And I think also, just to add to that, there's such a big team of people who work behind the scenes outside of the print workshop. We've got so many people, our archivists and our administrators and our book team and our social media team that make it all happen and pull it all together so that people can see all the wonderful things that are coming out of the activity. And that's, David calls it the media machine. And it's something that we work at all the time to improve and just to be accessible to our audiences and just to become more experts in what we're doing. But that adaptability has been incredible. And even with load shedding, we keep going. If we don't have power now, we work late into the night. That's just how we do it. And it's wonderful to just be so adaptable in these times. And we've all learned how to do that.
Amazing. I want to make sure that audience members get a chance to ask questions if they would like to. So please do, if you are in the audience and have a question, feel free to raise a hand using that yellow button, or to go ahead and type it in the Q&A. We'll just be sure to get to them before the end of the presentation.
There's a question about the book that Vivian shared with us. If you could share the title again.
Yes.
Please.
Management of Art Galleries by Magnus Reich. Magnus is out of New York. And I'm looking just to see when it was printed. It's not a new book, but it's still incredibly relevant. And I would say even more relevant over the last year. I'm not seeing the publishing date. Anyway, it's a great book. And he did just release a book specifically for artists about managing the business side of their, from their perspective. He's also, if you look on YouTube or just Google him, there's lots of content to see him speaking, and he's just a joy to listen to. He's got great energy as well. And he just loves to throw it in the face of the old world art world.
It's a relief to be able to.
It's great. I mean, the first time I read it, I was just like, thank you. Yeah, elitism has got no place around art.
One thing that we found as well that we didn't address in our presentations is something like art fairs that wasn't quite right for us. And thanks to COVID, in a way, we can function in a way where people can understand the complexity of our organization. In art fairs, you're either always in a painting side or a print side. There's no one category for people who work across the board in photography and paintings and prints and unique works. So that's in a way been a blessing in disguise that art fairs have cooled down for a bit, because it's given us the opportunity to really become visible in the way that we work, you know, and people being more open and receptive to understanding what an organization like David Krut does. So there's a lot of I'm with you, Vivian, a lot of the old ways that I'd be happy to see, we'll all be happy to see go and just see evolve a bit to suit more kind of diverse organizations that work across the board.
Mm-hmm. I really, really miss art fairs. And I know a lot of artists, gallerists, and businesses like David Krut's publishing workshop don't enjoy the art fair experience. For me, I mean, it's the foot traffic is better in this location I'm in now, but you know, I've done art fairs where 50,000 people come through the space in a 3-day period. And so it's an opportunity for exposure that and relationship building that is hard to duplicate. So we've done the best we can to duplicate it with digital initiatives, but I do look forward to being in person again at an art fair.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most exciting things once things begin to open up and once things such as art fairs are possible again, is that I think a lot of hybrid programming initiatives will emerge. We'll keep all of these positives, these silver linings that have emerged because of this pivot to the digital, but then again, being able to, as Jill mentioned and as Vivian mentioned, nothing replaces being there and seeing the work in person. So I think these hybrid kind of models might, you know, just bring us the best of both worlds, which is really exciting.
Yes.
Hopefully, that'll be great. That's what we're all hoping for.
It's nice to take a moment though to be able to reflect, also to you know, we don't have everything at our fingertips right now, but to still be creative. Instead, like, see where it emerges. Make beautiful projects, keep continuing collaboration. I think that's actually what's the strength in how people are working together, how we're working with different spaces that had already begun with a lot of different galleries and so on in the past, but now there's actual time to sit and to nurture and to come out creatively stronger. I think everyone needed a bit of their own headspace as well. So with those art fairs, it was just becoming quite a number of them. And as makers in spaces that it was very difficult for us to showcase works at art fairs, but also to make them, to continue to show new work all of the time when you're working in editions is very difficult. The pressure was enormous. So we also loved the art fair, but it came at an enormous expense sometimes. And then it was a lot of us having to speak about what printmaking means. That's why our education programs are essential. Yeah, so.
Wonderful. So I think, yeah, this might be a really good time to just pause and thank you so much. It's been, again, just so inspiring to learn about how each of your organizations has kind of stepped it up and pivoted to a digital format, and all the silver linings, whether that's kind of an increased geographic scope, an increased sense of intimacy, and expanded digital presence. So inspiring to hear how relationships and education rest at the center of both of your organizations, which so inspiring. So thank you again to Vivian, Jillian, and Amé for your wonderful presentations today. And as Vivian mentioned, I'll be sending out a list of links to projects or artists or initiatives that were mentioned throughout the presentations. I'll be sending those out to all audience members today. And a huge thanks to Jazz Lally and the Contemporary Art Gallery to Contemporary Art Society of Vancouver for co-hosting with Griffin Art Projects today. And we are wishing you all a wonderful rest of your Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.